give them your stewardship based on which you either you have your job or not. After that, very, very few people in this country are held accountable. But that is not where we're going. What we're saying is that there are structural challenges that we must fix. Let us not gloss over the cracks. Let's go to the foundation and begin to fix the foundation, because the cracks are expanding so wide that we are not able to get out of them anymore. Unfortunately for us, let us not gloss over the cracks. We're going through a foundation totally unnecessary, because we're going through this phase because expanding so wide that we are not able to get out of them. Every state, move to the next point and leave the streets and say, these are the things we need to do. Let's sit across the table and have agreement.
Keep us coming, guys.
And when to fix it back, and who to fix it. And if it doesn't happen, this is what we must do. That is what we talked about, implementation. Yes, we have started. The panel of inquiry that has been set up is the first step. I've heard you. We need more representation. And 12 members today, I've just told the SSG, it should be increased to 20 to accommodate those groups that are already there. That panel has 90 days. I've taken my notes, but there is a panel. I please am imploring all of you, document something. Go to that panel and let them tell them all you said and even more. Let it be recorded and documented in a report. So we have something, a document, based on which we will now move forward, we will now work. So if we can agree and the panel takes all the evidences, the names you have mentioned, the sections you have mentioned, the police, all of that should be documented. And we now have a public document and a process to now go after these individuals. Let it now be left to us to implement those we can implement in the door. Let us hold us now responsible for implementing those things in the course of that particular panel in which you have been represented. There are so many things that are going on. They did not start going on today. So it will, like someone said, it will be unrealistic to expect us to fix all of them today or in 4 years. But I tell you, at the base of our problem is
Only one, you're welcome. You're welcome. Good afternoon to you. You're welcome. How you doing? You're welcome to the building.
federal arrangement.
Thumbs up for me, please, Oli.
Years of government,
I hope you have done that. Thumbs up, thumbs up, thumbs up.
right? You have the judiciary that reflects the 3 tiers of government. You have the educational system that reflects the 3 tiers of government.
Wow, I will give you back. Don't worry. Don't worry, Oli.
Yes, in security
Don't worry. Thank you for that gift.
arrangement. It cannot work. It is not working. I have shouted and I have said it in various fora. Our security arrangement in this country must reflect.
Keep us coming, guys.
Until we get there, we're going to have this sort of crisis. I cannot be a governor of a state and cannot hire and fire my commissioner of police. It doesn't align with the concept of the federation. These have to
Thank you for that amazing thumbs up. Thanks, thanks, thanks. One love, keep us together, guys.
That what we have started,
Keep us coming.
go to its logical conclusion. Let it not be hijacked. What has happened today is, well, I can say a combination of various factors. Some of it deliberate, like I know, what's going on, what's been going on in the last couple of days. Some of it has been sponsored. Some of it,
Only say, so gift remain from you, host. Okay, thank you. Don't worry, don't worry. Only I'll give it back.
rich, Lord, they do whatever they like, and they get away with it because they are big men or because they have no father.
Let me
You
move.
have
Hello?
start the process of ending godfatherism in our lives and our politics. We must now take it to the next level. There cannot be any sacred cows. The most important thing for us in this country is our constitution and our laws. Nobody, no group of people must be above the constitution. Do you think so? There are things you have raised. There are things that have to deal with, I would say, sensitive matters. And there are things that have to deal with us as government. Those things that have to do with government, fortunately, they are all part of the second term agenda. I cannot be governor and not include you. I traveled around the 192 wards of this state. Nobody can tell me what's going on anywhere. I know. And one quick way of fixing our challenges is to make sure that we include more of you in how decisions are made. I have made up my mind. I have made up my mind on how and who we are going to hire for this next term. And I'll let you know here today. I'm not discussing with anybody, but 60% of our appointees must be under the age of 40. And the logic is simple. Who are we governing for? Who are we planning for? Is it not for the future? If 20 years ago they started with what we are doing now with Edo Best, do you think that a lot of these kids today who have no hope will be on the streets? Would they not have been better educated? So we cannot continue the way it has been in the past. It's only a stupid man, a stupid father, that will not understand that he has to invest in his children, has to starve himself and forsake so much so that the children can do well, that they will lead a happy old life. That logic has been lost on many of us in this nation. So I want to assure you that there's nothing wrong with what you're doing. There's nothing wrong with your protests. It's legitimate, and I support it. What I am worried about is the level of criminality. Part of the fight we had in our first term, was the issue of just maintaining law and order and criminality. Because a lot of these criminals had the cover of the Godfathers. They call them their infantry. They call them their lions and tigers. And you know that without law and order, there cannot be any economic growth. Nobody will invest. And you could see them in the last few days, the way they've come out, pouncing on people's private properties. That's the mentality. The reason the crisis in Edo is not an EndSARS one. It's not an EndSARS one because government supports EndSARS. The crisis in Edo is political. This is an extension of the elections. We defeated them, and they are looking for a backdoor way of making the state unstable. And I know, just like we defeated them in the elections, as long as we have you, we will contain them. They've escaped from the zoo. We've kept them under the guise of NSAS. With my NSAS army, we are going to gather them, arrest them, and put them back in the zoo they belong. Like I said, you have raised several issues here. Fortunately, most of the internal issues are things we are already working on and thinking through. What is our version of the neighborhood watch? As I speak today, 900 of them are being trained in Ogida police barracks. Another 1,100 are going to be trained after this set, which will make it 2,000. But over and above that, we're going to hire another set, and which will be about 20 people per ward. I'm even thinking that we may even look at doing one per unit that will be in charge of public safety, part of our pool of arrangement. We don't make noise as a government. So that is why you may not know. But we are it's not political. We are training them. We brought people from even outside of the country to join in the training because it is clear only us can protect us. That is what is becoming obvious. And as your governor, I am going to work through everything in my power to make sure that we have a strong internal security system and we protect ourselves. And like I said, the issues of a better government, of proper governance, of transparency in government, that is what we're emphasizing. And when we have younger people who can use technology, then we'll have more transparency and accountability. And that is what has informed my decision to make sure I have many more younger people working for government. Before making the broadcast, I decided to consult. I'm going to be making a broadcast tonight. But I wanted to first make sure I have touched base with my base. When I finish, I have another meeting, a Zoom meeting that's on now. I have to rush back to. I'm also touching base with the whole spectrum of leadership, religious leaders, traditional leaders, so that we can feel the pulse. Yes, we see ourselves, we see what is going on, but we still need to communicate and reach out to the larger society. Yesterday afternoon, for 6 hours, I was patrolling in company of PG, SSG, and the security chief. We patrolled the city for 6 hours, from 1 p.m. yesterday to 7. And so I saw for myself firsthand what was going on. It took us almost 1 hour, 20 minutes, from third roundabout to get to the bypass in Tapomas. By the time we were coming back again at night, it took us the same amount of time. So I know, nobody can tell me what's going on, the activities of the hoodlums and the people, and some of the people who are sponsoring them. We know. What we don't want is for them to hijack the very legitimate and required protests that you have spearheaded. NSAS. Underlying all of these challenges is it's going to get tougher because of the way we've managed our economies and run our affairs in the last 40 or more years. It's the reality, it's the fact. COVID has come to unravel all our inadequacies of the people of the country. We have to now respond. There are no quick fixes. If anyone comes to tell you this is going to go right in a few months, it's a lie. The next 2 to 3 years are going to be tough. But depending on how we manage, we will get out much stronger. Because this country is so blessed. I was listening to Tony Blair from our British Prime Minister on an interview this morning. He talks about Nigeria. There are very, very few countries that are as blessed as this country. Even in Edo, what don't we have? But except responsible leadership. Once you, the youth, now protesting, now rise up. Stop pointing fingers at others. You are now becoming leaders. And you'll soon find out that what you are criticizing, you may be criticized of, except you change. The affliction in this country affects us all. So don't say it is them or they, it's us. So in terms of the economy, we're going to continue to push. We're going to focus on priorities. We're going to cut down on waste. Like you said, there is too much waste. What you will do for 100 naira, government will do for 1,000 naira. The same thing. If you don't cut back on waste, there will be no money to do the things we need to do. Thank God for COVID. How many people have traveled this year abroad? So it means that we can live our lives without traveling, isn't it? So for me, I think that we have a window of opportunity. That you have started, that you have opened that window. Please let us not close it. Keep it open. We will continue to dialogue. That's the new way forward, anyway. We will continue to dialogue. But we're not going to do things the old way. That is what I can assure you. We're going to be transparent, we're going to be open, and we're going to be honest. There will be a lot of attacks on us, as you have seen. But we will count on you to protect the government that you have installed. Will you? I believe that I have, in a nutshell, talked about the headline issues, and to assure you that the curfew will be stepped down tonight. Because we've been reasonably assured, from what we did yesterday and today, we've been reasonably assured that the town is now under control. We still have challenges here and there. So we'll step down the curfew, allow people to now go about their daily work. However, the curfew will now be from 4 p.m. to 6 a.m. for 72 hours from tomorrow. So, it will 72 hours from tomorrow. From 4 p.m. to 6 a.m. We'll watch it for 2 days to make sure that we use it in clearing and making sure that there is no incidents. And I'm hoping that, barring any unforeseen circumstances, by Monday next week, we should be able to return life to normal. I want to end by thanking all of you once again, and to assure you that because of what you did on September 19th, I have no choice. Because every politician stands on a platform. The platform I stand on is you. So if you are not with me in are not part of me, then I stand on nothing. That is why I want to leave you with this parting words. That don't have any doubts. There's no have any iota of doubt. I am not in government to make money. I am not in government for fame. I am in government to serve and serve the next generation. And therefore, it means that you are the reason why I'm in government. If I cannot serve you, I will quit. By the grace of God, we will get out of this a stronger people, a stronger state, and a stronger Nigeria. God bless you.
Next keynote. Nigeria betain de passant de future. Culture, governance and developing.
I hope we have really been enjoying the conference. As you have on the program, we now have the keynote speech, which will be given by His Highness the Emir of Kano, who will be introduced later by Professor Stephen Chan. My duty now is just to introduce the chair, Professor Stephen Chan, who will then come to introduce to us the Emir before he delivers his speech. Stephen Chan is Professor of World Politics in the Department of Politics and International Studies here at SOAS. He was awarded the OBE in 2010 for services to Africa and higher education. And in the same year, Stephen was named the International Studies Association Eminent Scholar in Global Development. Stephen has been at SOAS for quite some time. He was the Foundation Dean of Law and Social Sciences here at SOAS, and he has also held named chairs around the world. Most recently, the Koran Adeno Stipton Chair of Academic Excellence at Crescent University, and the George Soros Chair in Public Policy at Central European University. A lot of the time, Stephen intimidates me a lot. He has published 32 books, 32 authored books, and having begun his career as an international civil servant, he continues to be seconded to diplomatic initiatives in Africa and the Middle East. He helped pioneer modern electoral observation at the 1980 independence elections of Zimbabwe. Stephen inspires most of us here so as on Africa. So it's a great honor for me introducing him, and I want to invite Stephen as chair of this keynote address to introduce the American Congress.
Keep us coming, guys. Who do you have?
Ladies and gentlemen,
Grab you don't have, guys. Keep us coming.
very much welcome you and welcome His Highness the Emir of Kano. There are some people in the world who inspire me, and the Emir of Kano is one of those people. It's very rare for us to be able to host somebody who traverses different worlds and is able to do so in a way that looks to a future which is meaningful and hopeful, not only for Nigeria, but for the wider region of West Africa, and I think for international cooperation way beyond the continent of Africa. I was delighted when he, as the governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria, was named by Bankers Magazine as the Africa and Global Central Bank Governor of the Year. I think this was an honor that was extremely well deserved. The amount of fiscal rigor that he tried to bring to Nigerian finances and economics was really quite astounding. And of course, we're all very familiar with the headlines of
Volume 26.
irregular practice, what we might loosely call corrupt practices in the body politic and public life in Nigeria. This very, very courageous stand is something which I think has been remarked upon as a turning point in public life.
You're welcome, Sir Sunday. You're welcome. You're welcome. Good afternoon to you. Thumbs up for me. Oh, wow. Thank you for that amazing thumbs up. You are so lovely. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Grab what you don't have.
Development as an economics student, master's degree, very, very much involved in academic life in his early career before turning to banking. He rose through the banking sector until he became the governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria. And upon being
Sir Sunday, if you don't have me, grab me. Oh, I will return to you.
he was able to take up the emirship of Kano. In this particular position, he's brought to a certain frontline position a combination of sagely knowledge and modern knowledge of what the country and northern Nigeria require for the future. An Islamic scholar who trained in Khartoum on top of his learnings in economics, he's been able to discourse wisely and progressively on Sharia and what it means in a modern context, in a modern cultural context, and how enlightened Islam can take a path forward in an engagement with modernity. He has defended minority groups, he's defended Sufi Islamic groups. For that, Boko Haram is the price of his time. He has defended the rights of women. He has been in many, many respects, far too many people know that wonderful crossover between someone who's traditionally learned in the modern ways of global finance, learned and conscious of the need for a new future based on new foundations. So it's my great pleasure to invite my inspiration to give a keynote on imagining Africa's future, language, culture, governance, development. Please join with me to welcome the Emir of Kano.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you, Chair. When I was first asked to speak on this conference, and asked to speak about African culture and governance and development, I did protest.
Wow, Oli, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you so much. Thumbs up for the host. You are so nice. Thanks a lot.
It's extremely difficult to speak about Africa in that manner.
Thumbs up for the host, everyone.
Then Professor Badari very kindly just
Do it right, oh, do it right, guys.
forced her to be even more problematic if we speak about Nigerian culture. So I have an old habit that I built in our central bank, which is whenever I'm involved in these functions, I try to participate that I can always hold up and say this was what I presented, and then I go ahead and say what I want to say, which may or may not be consistent with everything in the paper. But so there is a paper around this topic, the colonial economy, as you'd expect, talking about some of the tensions in the country, the military coups and so on. But I don't think I was invited here as an academic. I thought so I want to outplay the role of the email dealing with real issues of culture and development and some of the thoughts I have around that area, and hopefully some of the things I will say will go into the theme of this conference. When you think of Nigeria as one country, when you talk about these subjects, you end up with a great deal of difficulty. And take simply developmental indices or poverty indices. One of the key indicators of development is the measure of poverty. If you look at headline numbers, you find that 46% of Nigerians are living below the poverty line based on UNDP figures for 2015. However, when we break that down, we find that only 20% of Nigerians in the southwest are living below poverty. 80% of Nigerians in the northwest are living below poverty. So clearly, even best way to begin this is to talk about the kind of transition I had from being the governor of Central Bank to MA, where I moved from a situation where I dealt with numbers and statistics to a situation where I was dealing with the human beings behind those numbers and trying to understand what those numbers meant. And then trying to think through how, apart from
Keep on coming, guys.
political debates we have about socialism and capitalism and globalization, how in real terms we need to understand the real underlying fundamental causes of the problems that we face. I always give this example, and I'll try this time to go through it without any kind of emotions, but it's for me a telling example of the difference between looking at a statistic and looking at a human being. In the central bank, we read of these numbers about the number of Nigerians living on less than $1 a day. And I tell people I never knew what it meant to live on less than $1 a day in the end. You know, and one instance I give is what I still consider perhaps the saddest day in my life, where, because usually when I sit in court, people come, some have problems with their husbands, some have problems with their wives, some have issues with their neighbors, some have land issues, some need help with drugs. And while sitting there, I heard this loud scream, and I sent someone to find out what it was, and there was this woman who had walked across from the hospital, across from the palace, along with the women with their children. And while waiting for her turn to see the baby, her baby had died. And the baby died because she didn't have 3,000 naira for drugs. That's less than $10. And there are 8 women in line right then, they needed like 20,000. So this is a country where people, or part of the country, where a woman would lose her baby because she cannot buy drugs of $5, $10. That is what it means to live on less than $1 a day. Now, it radically changes and transforms one's view of the life of development of poverty. And we begin to look at how we have defined our development in terms of trying to look very much like what we call developed world. So you go to Abuja and you've got all these beautiful bridges, and even in beautiful bridges, overhead bridges, beautiful roads, street lights, skyscrapers, and we see it as development. When in fact, the vast majority of people are walking on those streets hungry and they're sick, and they've got nothing to do. And for a fraction of those resources, you could change the lives of people. And I always give the story of a poor Nigerian man from Kogi State who was invited for a town hall meeting with the former President of the World Bank in Abuja. And so when we were asked to speak, the street to understand. And he made this, we all laughed when he made this statement, but it was so profound. He said, look, in my village, there's a river that's on the main road. And during the rainy season, I can't come out. The only reason I'm able to make it to is this is dry season, so I can walk across the stream and get a bus to come to Abuja. But what surprises me is I came to Abuja and I saw all these bridges, and there's no water, there's no river in Abuja. And it's fundamental in a sense. We think we are developed because Abuja begins to look like London. When in fact 80-90% of the population, you need small bridges that will just give them access to cities, get their farm produce to the market, get them to hospital in case of emergency, and they need help. So again, I would say that's a problem that Nigerians interrelations between what cooperation and development in the part of the country that I happen to be engaged with on a daily basis. And I've been involved in these debates at a theoretical level for decades. I've been involved in these debates around Islam and modernity, around negotiating interpretations, somewhat on the place of the Muslim community in multi-religious or secular state. But these tensions, okay, and these issues and these interpretations have a profound impact from a developmental perspective in a manner in which I had not considered before. So, having studied economics and having studied Islamic law, I now find myself in a role where I can actually begin to see how certain archaic or wrong or misunderstood perceptions or interpretations of Islam have actually led to economic development. That sounds strange and very controversial thesis. So one of the first lessons we learn in economics is markets and the whole issue of population and how you continue to increase the labor force on a limited amount of land resources and you end up with diminishing marginal productivity. I call it just diminishing margins or the law of diminishing because everything goes down. Now, take Nigeria in 1960. The amount of land available to the rural dweller on average is 2 hectares. Today it is 0. And in the next decade or two, it will be 0. It's a combination of desertification, desalination, erosion, and environmental issues, but it's also about demographic explosion. And that has led to all sorts of conflicts. We recently hear every day about Fulani herdsmen and their conflicts with grazers and people ethnicize or give religious colorations to what, by the way, is a problem that's as old as the Old Testament itself. You don't even graze in land, you encroach on the land, you go into lots of homes. We have Boko Haram, we have ethnic conflicts, and we're not joining the dots. We're not beginning to make the connection between the failure of social policy and the social unrest and the economic problems that we face as a country. So I come from a part of the country where it's part of the Sahel, which I suppose 500 years ago, 600 years ago was the richest part of sub-Saharan Africa, eclipsed later with the discovery of the steamship and colonialism and coastal cities. So cities like Kano and Katsina and Timbuktu and Gao got eclipsed by Lagos and Accra and Abuja and so on. But with social structures and family structures and social organizations that were formed for wealthy societies, which have not yet understood that the world has changed. Okay, so it's very easy in Kano to see a man who has no employment of any sort and who earns nothing marry 3 women and have 18, 19 children. He's very happy to have them roam the streets as what we call a man. And it's also very easy to see public officers discussing how they're going to find the money, how they're going to build the schools, how they're going to care for the Nigeria, without anybody ever asking if the father who gave birth to this child had certain responsibilities in the first place and if he should be held responsible for the child he brought. While the rest of the Muslim world has introduced reforms to family law, looked at
Volume 25, volume 46.
issues like child spacing, regulated polygamy, make sure that you're able to maintain a family before you have it, child rights, these are issues that are not part of the conversation, or they've just started being part of the conversation in a very difficult manner in the North, partly because of a culture that has been built in which the interpretations of Islam and certain historical social structures have become so conflated that it's very easy to get emotional rather than have a rational and proper intellectual conversation. So, how did we get here? How did we get to a situation where today the very large percentage of girl children in the North never complete school? If you take the northeast and northwest of Nigeria, maybe about 10% or less of adolescent girls read and write. The northeast has maternal mortality rates 5 times the global average. In a state like Zamfara and a state like Yobe, 90% of the population is living in poverty. Where you have in Kano State alone 3 million children who are out of school, and in the north maybe 15-16 million statistically out of school. So Nigeria, after India, has the highest number of out of school children in the world. How did we get to a situation where one country has become effectively 2 countries? Where as I said in a recent speech, which didn't go down well with people, if the North itself were a country on its own, it probably would be one of the poorest countries in the world. Because we're not looking below the headline numbers. Now, there are a number of issues that we need to look at. Some of them, I think, have not been seriously considered in academic discourse, and I'm hoping that institutes like yours will look at the implications of some of the events of our history. So if we go back to colonial education policy and the works, of course, of people like Tibin Tarana, who seriously studied education, especially in northern Nigeria, and the policy of the British as far as education is concerned. The arrival of Britain and the conquest of the North and turning of the North into British territory, it came with certain it was accompanied by certain events around policy that have had a long-lasting impact on where the North is. The North was unfortunate to have its first 3 governors come from Sudan, coming straight from a very, very, very bad experience with the Mahdi. Therefore, it's like getting someone with a strong Islamophobic tendency today to go and rule a Muslim country. So first of all, from Lord Lugard on, the principal fear was, how do we make sure that we do not reproduce in northern Nigeria the kind of radical Muslim intellectuals that we produce in Egypt and India and Sudan? And determined not to repeat the mistake of Egypt and the Sudan and India, the British had a policy, 1, of keeping as many northerners illiterate as possible. 2, when you educate them, make sure you educate them to be employees, competent employees of the native authority and obedient servants to the colonial administration. So the policy was explicit. Teach them respect for hierarchy. Teach them the supremacy of the white man. Teach them technical skills, but make sure they do not develop a mind of their own and they don't challenge the system. Northern Nigeria, of all the protectorates of Britain, had the lowest number of schools. We had fewer schools than Ghana. As of 1959, when the first school offering higher school certificate started offering. That was Warwick College. There are already 20 schools offering that in South Africa. At the point of independence, the North had maybe 2,000 elementary schools, while the South had about 9,000. The North had 200,000 children in elementary school, the South had about 1.2. This was even before the southern region started universal free primary education. Nowhere in the British colony did we have the gaps between boys' education and girls' education that we had in northern Nigeria. And these gaps were exacerbated by the very nature of British colonial policy. So girls' schools were set up the first boys' school was set in 1910. The first girls' school was set up around 1930. What we call girls' centers in Kano, Katsina. Those schools aim to teach basic numeracy and literacy, and then personal hygiene, nursing, domestic chores that will make those young ladies that were good wives to the educated boys that were educated. These children, these ladies were all children of the nobility of aristocracy. So these were princesses and daughters of title holders in those schools. That decision was a disaster because children of royalty were the ones that tended to get married off early. There was a very high demand for princesses, for people who thought it was a way for upward social mobility. So by the age of 10, 11, every princess would have many suitors. So usually they would be married off very early. And even if they completed the school anyway, the daughters of emirs and the daughters of qadis and the daughters of imams never went out to work. There was no financial incentive. They were the ones that practiced purdah or gulay at the most extreme form, as many of you probably, those who've read Aisha Imam's doctorate thesis will be familiar with. So girls' schools were set up for those who did not need them or use them. And the Telekawa, the ordinary people, did not send their daughters to school because their experience of the boys' schools had not been very positive. Out of the 3,000 or so boys that had finished elementary schooling by 1945 or so, only 700 got employed in the native authority system, or 700 were children of noblemen. So the Telekawa who sent their boys to school found that their boys did not have access to native authority jobs. Education was not for them a path for overthrowing the system, precisely because the British system of indirect rule was based on the principle of strengthening the traditional hierarchies, so long as those hierarchies remain loyal to the British. I'm a beneficiary of that, I admit, but this is really the logic of colonialism and colonial education. And the second thing that the British did, largely under the influence, obviously, of Christian missionaries like Miller, was to actively devalue and put a stop to Islamic education and Arabic education in many ways. So, for example, the Ajami script, which was nothing but Hausa language written in Arabic characters, was basically stopped as part of education. And Fisher was quite clear in his documentation that if you allow the use of Arabic characters, then you're promoting the Mohammedan religion. So basically, as part of a world in which imperialist officers, communism in the Soviet Union, where there was this whole orchestrated attempt to put a stop to Arabic Islamic civilization, northern Nigeria also suffered. And as Nigerians know, this is something that continued even after independence. I still have this funny example of a few decades ago where on our currency we always had Ajami, which is Hausa Arabic street that says 10 naira, it says naira goma. If you read Ajami, it's Hausa naira goma, naira ashirin. But just taken out because we had a central bank governor and a president with all these Islamic characters, and they removed them. You know, just Hausa, you know, but it's a continuation of that policy. Now, what is the danger of that? And this goes beyond religion. You have part of the country that for 500 years, 700 years, 800 years has been part of an Islamic civilization, where the levels of education in the Islamic sciences have been extremely advanced, comparable to any part of the world. I mean, a young child would learn the Quran. After the Quran, he would go to the Makran to Italy, he would learn fiqh, he would learn grammar, he would learn hadith, he would learn jurisprudence, basically letters written in Arabic. Arabic was the language of the courts, of the alias group, the jurisprudence in Arabic, and so on. And all of that was given a value of 0. And it still gets a value of 0. Today we say there are 10 children out of school in Kano. Maybe out of those 3 million, at least 2 million know how to read and write in Arabic. But for all intents and purposes, they are illiterate. There is no system for them. The system has no place for them. They have no future in the system. The result is that they end up in the hands of some radical preacher who understands them, who gives value to their education, who radicalizes them, and takes advantage of the resentment they have against the system, and they turn against society. And they come and say, Western education is haram. And they want to kill you because you've had Western education. They want to destroy the system, which has no place for them, because it has no value for education. And as we try to deal with it, yes, we have to deal with a military solution, but no one is thinking beyond killing and jailing and basically crushing this movement. No one is looking at some of the fundamental issues, and one issue being that you cannot just erase 600 years, 700 years of history because of a 60-year interruption by the British. Yes, 60 years of colonialism is important, but 60 years is no reason to completely obliterate 500 years. And it's difficult, and it's impossible to do it. And it will keep coming back. You can't, Northern Nigeria was not a clean slate, it was not a place without a history, it was a place without a culture, a tradition, and there has to be a way of mainstreaming that history and that civilization into this rich country that we have. And this is something that, frankly, I never really thought about very deeply until I came to this role and realized all the frustrations that people feel. When you see someone who's memorized the Quran, who studies Arabic, who's very fluent in Arabic, who knows jurisprudence, who knows Islamic legal theory, and for all intents and purposes, he's an illiterate, he doesn't have an opportunity, whereas in the previous system, he would be a qadi, an advisor in the court of the emir. And whereas, if you were an Arab in Egypt, without that level of proficiency in Arabic, he could get into a university and study medicine in Arabic. So why is it that you can't study medicine in Arabic in Nigeria, or history, or political science, or economics? It happens in the Arab world. Why is it that an Arab who knows how to read and write Arabic is considered literate? An Arab who has studied Islamic law is considered educated, but a Nigerian who does that outside the formal English schooling system is not. How is it possible for a Chinese to be a doctor without speaking English? But apparently in Nigeria it's not possible. And you know, so we're dealing with an entire system and worldview that, while we think it's Nigerian, is actually nothing but a colonial legacy. We're still in a post-colonial, neo-colonial mindset, and we're unwilling to challenge the legacies of colonialism. And it takes courage, I think, to begin to ask those questions. How do you turn the 6 centuries of Islamic teaching and learning and contact with the Arab world through trans-Saharan trade and caravans and through exchange of ideas? How do you turn that into an asset rather than a liability? Because at the moment, the Muslims of the Northwest and the Northeast are a liability to this country. They're poor, they're marginalized, their education has no value, they're frustrated, and they are susceptible at this point in time to being co-opted into agendas that are not even theirs. It's not just Northern Nigeria, it's all over the Sahel. It's a problem that we need to deal with. A few weeks ago, this is prayer time in Nigeria. Okay, so a few weeks ago, the French president who was in, I think, Mali, and had an interesting meeting with about 5 West African heads of state on the Sahel. And at the end of that meeting, what were they talking about? How many French troops you're going to have? How many soldiers each country was going to have? I was waiting to see how many million euro was France going to invest in education in the Sahel? What agricultural policies were you going to have? How many megawatts? How do you turn all the solar energy in the Sahel into power for industries, for development? No one is talking about that. Talking about how many bullets you're going to have, how many terrorists you're going to shoot. It does not address the problem. So when we speak about culture, and so it's precisely that insulation from modernity, the level of the education, first of all, that deprived the bulk of the north of Western education, while stopping the progress of Islamic education, has left the northwest and northeast of Nigeria locked in the past. That is the truth. Civilizationally and culturally, they have been delinked from the rest of the Muslim world. So many of the issues you deal with in Nigeria today, we're still talking about regulating the age of marriage. Look, Egypt regulated the age of marriage in the 1950s. Most Muslim countries, Egypt, Malaysia, Tunisia, Algeria, Morocco, you can't go and marry a girl of 12. It's illegal. And even those countries that have not made it illegal have put in such strict guidelines that if you want to marry a girl below 15 or 16 or 17 or 18, depending on the age, you will need the approval of the judge, who will make sure that the girl is old enough to take on the role of a wife and a mother. But that conversation in Nigeria today has just started, and it is a very difficult one to have. Most of these countries have understood that you've got to regulate polygamy. Nobody says outlaw it, nobody says prohibit it, but clearly the Islamic law and Islamic jurisprudence has always had underlying the permissibility of polygamy, also responsibility that you've got to take. The rights of children, okay, to education, to care. You can't just give birth to a child and leave him on the street for the sex you care of. You can't just produce children you cannot take care of. And now these are basic conversations that have taken place for decades in the Muslim world, which have not taken place in Nigeria. So you, on the one hand, the North was not given Western education. On the other hand, its progress in terms of understanding its own religion and this process of ijtihad, of coming up with new rulings for changing times has been stopped. And you therefore have a whole generation of experts and generations of experts who are experts on 15th century Muslim jurisprudence, and I think all the questions that we need have been answered. And are we doing new access? Now, until we address this issue of what's our attitude to the education of our girls, what's our attitude to the age at which a girl should be a wife and a mother, what's our attitude to spacing children, what's our attitude to polygamy, what's our attitude to responsibility as a parent, and these are all issues of Islamic jurisprudence that have to be used to confront culture. And again, part of the mistake that people have made in the past is to come to people and say, well, this is the United Nations resolution. Well, they don't care about the United Nations. So it's not an argument. Yeah, it's not an argument. But the truth is, I'm sure, and then those of you who are, Moshe is a scholar of Sharia. Imam Malik talked about 18 as the age of marriage, and so did Abu Hanifa, and so did Ahmad bin Hanbal. Yes, Shafi'i said 15. So out of the 4 Sunni schools, 3 of the Imams actually at one time mentioned 18 when they talked about age of marriage. But you say 18 today, and it's seen as the United Nations agenda. So being able to argue from within the tradition, using the Quran and the Jews, and also the work of other Muslims is important. But you can't do that until we begin the process of opening up that civilization and relinking the jurisprudence and the scholarship to the international scholarship in Islam. So culture and cultural practices, to my mind, have led to this demographic inclusion. And that has contributed to the levels of poverty and development, and they will continue to do so until we go and address the roots. If you're a governor in a state in northern Nigeria today and you're told you've got 250,000 children who are going to school, I assure you by the time you build the classrooms for them, there will be another 500,000 waiting. We have in the northeast and northwest, and this is why this conversation is important. We have gone through a process of commodification of people. We have this mass production of things and devalue them at the same time. So, if you think about the present and the future, what would I say are the key things we need to look at? Apart from, of course, I can go on with the standard economic arguments, make arguments against the rentier state, and rent seeking, by the way, continues in different guises with one government, but it's either in the currency markets or in the petroleum sector. Until we deal with that as a nation, we're not going to have the development we want. So we can talk about the general economic culture of the country, the rent seeking state, the corruption, the lack of focus on industrialization, in a sense, the continuation of, even on the economic level, just as we've done at the cultural level, of this colonial project. Nigeria is a country that I always say it's special in that we export what we don't have and we import what we have. Look, why should Nigeria import petroleum products? But if you take the trade between Nigeria and the United Kingdom, the largest single component of Nigerian imports from Britain and from France is petroleum products. We're keeping refineries in Europe open and exporting our crude. We burn our gas and we don't have electricity. And by the way, even though we don't have electricity, we do export electricity to Niger. We have all these hides and skin, and we import shoes from China. We have a large cotton belt. Our textiles are all dead. We import fabric from the Far East. Plastic made from petrochemicals, and we're an oil-producing country. China is a net importer of crude oil. So they buy our crude oil and they're able to turn it into petrochemicals and sell as plastics. We have hides and skin. What do we do with our hides and skin? Pepper soup. We consume it. We consume it. It's a delicacy in some parts of the country. That's GDP. Other countries, I mean, as far back as the 16th, 15th century, according to economic historians, Kano was exporting leather and bags and shoes to Morocco, to India. Today we don't. We export the blue. We're so good at this. We even had a military government that conducted a free and fair election in Liberia. And it's sad because you had this, and if you go back before this crisis, we had a country that was growing GDP growing at 7%. Imagine at what rate Nigeria would grow if we stopped importing petroleum products and stopped all these subsidy schemes, swaps, and that which every day we still carry on, which cost me my job, by the way. If we stopped all of that and just farmed petrochemicals and became a net exporter of petrochemicals, if we stopped importing 3 million pairs of shoes from China instead of producing own shoes in the and I'm not talking about Saint Laurent, Pierre Cardin, or Gucci. I'm talking about simple shoes that children wear to school, that people wear to farms, handbags for the woman in the village. I'm not talking about synthetic, expensive leather. By the way, the goat skin in Kano is called Moroccan leather. It's the best leather. But we don't do anything with it for the families of it. For a country of 170 million people, we generate at a peak today a little over 4,000 megawatts of electricity. And that is not 4,000 megawatts 24/7. If in a month you get to 4,000 megawatts for 1 minute, you say you produced 4,000 megawatts in June. How do you re-industrialize? So we've had a process of deindustrialization. So tell me, if you had an imperialist power in Nigeria, if Britain were today in charge of Nigerian government, can they have it any better? Buy my crude, sell you petroleum products. Buy your cotton, sell you textiles. Buy your hides and skin, give you fancy shoes to wear, sell you private jets. Was this not what colonialism was about? Was this not what they came and fought and sought? Was this not what it was all about? They had stopped slavery, so they didn't come for the slaves. This was what they came for. We're giving them for free 60 years after they left. So, I don't know if what I say, because I'm also processing still in my mind as I go along these things, but the long and short of it, I think is, I have come to the sad conclusion that we are all still products of colonialism. And we are yet to free ourselves economically, socially, and culturally. And we need to go back. For the Muslim North, there has to be a recognition that history has brought Nigeria together, and you're part of this country, and you've got to respect the diversity of the country. But also have the confidence to insist that your history cannot be written off. It cannot be wiped out by 60 years of colonialism. We will sit side by side. We will speak English and speak Arabic. And we will be a part of a country that recognizes that it has brought people with history that has flowed from different parts of the world. Economics, we've got to realize that so long as we continue producing raw materials and exporting, we are still in a post-colonial mindset. We've got to do what the Southeast Asian countries did for themselves. And it's not just by me. I wrote an article in 2012 about China, and it was a very popular article. People thought I was being ungrateful to Chinese for all the help they did for us. And I tried to explain that, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter whether it's British or American or Chinese. If I'm exporting raw materials and importing finished products, I am in a trading relationship that will end up changing terms of trade against me, and I'm in a colonial or quasi-colonial relationship. What we have to do to China is what China did to Europe. Take away the manufacturing from China. And I'm not talking about competing with the Chinese and selling to Europeans. We don't need to. You've got a country of 170 million people. That's enough market. Look at Aliko Dangote. He's not exporting. He's the richest man in Africa, selling to Nigerians. Cement, flour, sugar. So just add to the list. Shoes, bags, fabric, textiles, garments, slippers. Don't go into producing. Nobody says go compete with aerospace. We're not interested in that. Basic industrialization, basic agro-processing. Just stop importing rice from Thailand to start with, and produce the rice next door. Or stop eating rice. If you can't produce it, eat corn, eat maize, eat wheat. Eat what you produce. And this is precisely how those countries that broke away from poverty. Would you find this in this paper? Maybe one or two sentences out of this somewhere. I'm hoping that just try to share some thoughts and maybe if you're not what you'd like to talk about it. And I think it would be interesting for this to just talk about it for attention.
You talked about polygamy and the fact that a lot of people have kids and don't know how to take care of them. So I want to talk a little bit about patriarchy and poverty and the cycle there. So in northern Nigeria, there's a saying, if you're poor, that you should add another wife. And that's kind of a common belief amongst people. So an issue is you have patriarchy kind of perpetuating this narrative that that's the way forward. So a lot of people don't really understand what marriage is. They see it as long as I marry a wife and I'm keeping her at home, I've done my duty, even when it comes to kids. And you mentioned about young girls getting married off at young. And the fact of the matter is, often the people that do that are those who have the money to kind of bribe the parents and say, I want your daughter hand in marriage. And often it's because they're poor and they don't really have much of a choice. They can't afford her schooling, that they think that's the best way forward to marry her off. You've also mentioned that there's a gap in terms of social policy. So what would you advise in terms of the absence of government, in terms of providing policies where people have access to education and healthcare? That's kind of pushing people to join extremist groups or marry off their young daughters. What can Nigerians do in terms of bridging that gap in the absence of government? Because even if you do encourage people to have less children, they still might have that barrier to access to jobs, where if they don't know the right people, they're still left in poverty, so they're still left without much of a choice. So what would you do in that circumstance?
Well, first of all, I think that there are many things that really point to the failure of the state. I mean, this is very simple. If you give birth to a child and the child is found on the street, you're responsible. Someone has to say, this is your son. And if you go to Islamic law, the father is responsible for the maintenance of his child. And if he's poor, if he has a son who can do it, he does that. If he has a brother, when there's a whole sequence of wilaya. And it is only when no member of your family or one of those on whom responsibility is placed by the Sharia is capable of taking care of your child that burden falls on society. So we simply say, implement what is already in the law. If you have a child, you have the responsibility for that child. Right now, the children are treated as criminals. They do not produce themselves. Okay, so that's one. So you've got the issue of failure of the state. And this cuts across many things. And I can understand politicians have a problem because sometimes they have a conflict between what is right and what is popular. The truth is, they need to do some of the things that are right, that are not popular, and other parts of the world did it. So if it is determined that it is harmful to a girl that she be married below a certain age, it is the responsibility of the state to say you cannot marry off your daughter below that age, period. Okay? Now, if I could do the law, I would have made the law to say you cannot marry off your daughter below a certain age. Now, if you feel your religion or your interpretation of religion says that you can marry her off below that age, well, go somewhere else and marry her off, but not in my state. And this is really where I think the political authorities take responsibility. Now, part of what we try to do is to help them by having a conversation, by having people begin to accept. And the truth is that the vast majority don't understand that. I was having a conversation with someone yesterday who said, or this morning, who said, you know, of resistance. I said, well, you can sometimes be carried away by noise from the establishment. Because the truth is that there are a number of scholars who know that everything said is true and that this is not Islamic culture. But if you go down to the village, if there's a woman whose daughter has been married off at a young age and who's suffering from BVF and sitting right in front of her, she understands that this is wrong. If there's a woman whose at the geospatial map of Kano. You probably see 20 mosques before you see a school. But if you go to Muslim history, mosques were never just buildings for prayers. I mean, mosques were schools, mosques were places where you had political meetings, mosques were places where rulers were crowned or appointed and so on. If you go to Fars in Morocco, the universities in the mosque. The great university of Al-Azhar, they were in the mosque. In every part of northern Nigeria, there are traditional mosques. But now you've got a number of mosques being built with sections. I think most of the structures but that's still just for prayer. But the point I'm making is if you have a mosque, then you have a school. There's no reason why you can't bring teachers and students to learn. Why do you need to have money to build a primary school or explain to a child from primary because it's a famous kilometer transportation to primary school where there's a mosque next door? Now, when I said that, I think the headlines were that I said all mosques should be converted to schools. Okay, and I don't know how they got to that interpretation, but everything got buried in that. But that's the point. So you've got to think out of the box in terms of converting. Basically, like I said, so you've got this civilization that produces all these mosques. These mosques can be an asset. You can use the mosque as a primary school. You can use the mosque as a secondary school. You can use the mosque as a hospital if you want, and can clean it up for prayer. So you don't need to start construction. Bring the teachers, bring intellectual activity, bring some solar power, bring some tablets, and you'll be amazed what kind of education you can take to a rural area. Okay, for the cost of brick and mortar for a school. So you're good to deal with education, deal with poverty, build the schools, and then you need all these foundations, the sector support, scholarships, people need to support children. This is how the Turks did. They had foundations, and Suleiman had these great foundations attached to mosques that sponsored education.
I can understand where the idea is coming from. It's more or less of the now, he's complaining about marginalization of the North. The Yorubas complain of marginalization. Nigeria complain of the same. There's this aspect of Biafra. And I ask, who is marginalizing who? So maybe Nigeria is actually marginalizing itself. And so that's one point. Secondly, the basic solution, I think, when we talk about engaging the imams, because they still control a lot of audience and attention in Nigeria. And who now ask that, okay, all these issues we have analyzed, what is the way forward? The political class has failed the nation, and the elites, of course, it serves their interest. So what will be the basic things? We can't be complaining about colonialism after 60 years or so of independence any longer. And so that thing is, how do we move forward to solve all these big issues? That's the part one. Part two is that, which has to do with the EMA itself. The Hausa program in SWAS is dying or dead, I don't know. And of course also the Yoruba, that's the issue I read this morning.
Wow, another family. Good evening, good afternoon, ma. You are welcome. You are welcome. Thank you, ma, for coming. Mommy, thumbs up for me, oh, to your lovely daughter. You are welcome.
Not to complain about the local market. I talked about the actual conditions of poverty I see in the north and trying to understand what brought them about and how we can deal with them. I know because you've got these, in Nigeria, marginalization is a term that's a very useful political one. And when people say they're marginalized, usually they just mean they haven't seen enough ministers from their local government in Abuja. Which is, again, it goes back to this distorted exactly what development is. I mean, why do I care if I have 10 ministers in Abuja from Kano? How does that affect the level of my education? How does that affect the culture where I live? That's why I think when I see this to me, I have not heard the same talk about the fact how you share resources, oil money from north to north, just to north. And we've always sucked into this debate of marginalization, which happens every 4 years. A different part of the country is marginalized. So when you have a southern government, the northerners say we're marginalized. You have a northern government, southerners say we're marginalized. And you say, in what way? Jonathan was from the Niger Delta. How much investment did he put in the Niger Delta? By how much? So we need to get out of that conversation. I am not here for this marginalization conversation. And by the way, I don't even think of myself as a I think
My
the
daddy.
country.
Today.
This
Today.
and this
Today. Today.
so
Okay.
I do believe the British. And I think they did what they needed to do as a colonial administration. We did this all to ourselves after they left. And that's the problem. They might have
Does he cook? Does he
because for all
baby eat pasta or cookie?
the we did to ourselves. And I think we need to
Again, short. She's a pep short.
in 1914, independent in 1960, 46 years. We've been independent now we've been independent for longer than the British. We can't blame the British. Not that they don't deserve blame, they do. but we can't hold them, and responsible for what we did to ourselves, So for me, I think it's if we choose to forget all our history, if we choose to produce raw materials for them after they've gone and keep their refineries open and put their goods, that's our decision. I've got to face that.
Baby, cook, eat, share. Okay, I'll come out. Come on, baby, share. Blessing, share. If we pass, mommy, people. Oh,
To the extent that
I think here.
conversation,
Poo,
but I hear your point, and I think
baby, poo.
everything we can to keep
Is
access to
Dada, baby, poo. Is Dada, baby, oh. F4, yeah, F4, yeah.
Your Excellency, I humbly would like to give thanks and praise for your presence and your wisdom. My question is there a critical mass of leaders in Nigeria who broadly think like you, who can come together to strategize and activate the innovation program you have so brilliantly articulated?
It's people. No, it's us. It's wonderful. Mimi.
one of the states in Nigeria now is supposed to implement Sharia. I got involved in that debate. And when I started, initially I thought I was alone. When the debate continued, I realized that there were very many people who believed exactly what I believed, just didn't want to be the ones to come out and say it. Okay? My sense is that if you, well, one, you should never be afraid of being a minority, even a minority of one. You should try to have the courage of your convictions, and then if you're in a leadership position, as Marcus Aurelius said, and you give you the choice between what is right and what is popular, you must do what is right. And you can never go wrong with that. I don't think there's anyone that, as long as you continue to have a conversation, will not accept that there's something wrong with taking it. I mean, look at what
Marty.
speeches say.
This is food. Eat. Come on. Yeah. Come on. Pepe. Aqua. Mimi.
And the women themselves will get up and say, we've had enough of it. And this is how society changes. What I'm happy about, I mean, I've not made as much progress as I had hoped I would on this cultural change. I've met perhaps far stiffer resistance from certain forces. There is a conversation today. And the role of parents and the rights of children. There's a question about contraception and child spacing. And there was a time when to open this conversation, you would just be accused of pursuing some Judeo-Christian colonial agenda against Islam, and that's it. Today, you've got people who say, no, this is something that has to stop. So I think we will get there. As a country, we've dashed. I'm a strong believer in this country and what we can do, and I think we can.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I'm not Nigerian, not even West African, but what I heard today is probably the best speech given by an African leader for a very long time. Regarding exporting what we don't have and importing what we have, this is an African business agreed everywhere. And I think that's going to take us a long time to overcome. But my question to you is, what I find really heartbreaking is this idea of having so many educated kids, which I see really worthless because they have the wrong kind of knowledge. That's really devastating because any child has a level of power.
Eat.
Incredibly intelligent child that can advance the whole society.
Pasta.
Leaders to introduce maybe secular
A pig. Mommy, a pig. This. Mommy. A pig. This. A pig. Come. Do.
Thank you. It's always a great pleasure to be referred to as a young.
Do.
Thank you very much for the lecture. I just have to I just want you to clarify a little bit of a slippage about the importance of sexual health education and the importance of dealing with sexual
Baby shark aku satu hati satu
thing we hear a lot around the Asian tigers, Africa needing to model itself around that, which is fundamentally around the developmental state model, right? And we see, and we know,
baby
that
satu
relies on
baby daddy satu daddy satu mami satu baby satu ala
the Asian tigers begin to
Dozi amadi
developmental
si
fashion concepts.
amadi
For instance, what is happening in
baby
post-America,
kake
right? The Roman struggle.
baby this daddy mami this kake mimi
Beyond the Asian tigers.
mama
Thank you for your presentation. I'm using something that you said as a jumping off point for an issue that you didn't necessarily touch on directly, which is the issue of the thousands and thousands of young African children who are dying in the Mediterranean every month in the last 2 years to become increasingly horrible. And a lot of those young people are from northern Nigeria. And I like that you mentioned your dislike for the militarization of the response to Boko Haram and to terrorism in the Sahel. But part of that is now we're seeing this increasing militarization or securitization of the response to African migration and mobility. And one of the things that stands out to me is how do we get African leaders to take more responsibility for the number of young African children who are dying in the Mediterranean today? From your perspective, as a leader in a country or in a space in a territory that is sort of implicated in this process.
In light of the recent comment by the President of France about Africa having some civilizational problems and blaming that for the state of affairs on the continent, you mentioned the fact that Nigeria is a very diverse country. It's not a nation, for sure. There's a lot of diversity of linguistic, religious, ethnic diversity. How do you see what makes Nigeria or what makes Nigeria a nation? Do you see any alternative other than Western liberal values of democracy, of human rights, civic ideals of nationalism and citizenship? Beyond these ideals of citizenship, do you see any ideals from existing Nigerian civilization? Nigeria as a nation has archetype of being a Nigerian.
This question is a very tough one. mainstream French or whatever, study this in English, and then you got Quran, Hadith, fiqh, and so on in Arabic. Now, my proposal is let's do what the Arab nations do. If you go to the University of Cairo today and want to study medicine, you have the option of studying medicine in English or studying medicine in Arabic. So what is wrong with mainstream? And in fact, beyond Arabic, why shouldn't we aim for a situation where we say that's Hausa? Why? If you learn to medicine in Hausa, is it that you cannot do the operation because you're taught in Hausa? Do you need, so it's about basically asking simple questions. Why does it have to be English? Why? Why am I seen as more educated than someone because I speak better English? And the further my accent is away from the Nigerian accent, the more educated apparently I am. So, we need to get out of that. And I think it's by having pedagogical answers. I would say, look, education is on the concurrent list. That means states have certain flexibility in how they formulate education. Delegates that to the states. If Kano feels that for schools built by the Kano state government and for the secondary schools and for the universities owned by Kano state, they want to offer economics and political science and history and medicine and engineering to students who have shown a certain level of proficiency in Arabic. Okay, maybe after going through some conversion courses, on basic, let them do it. They set the standards. And that way, at least you begin to mainstream them and take them out of the margins. Okay, right now, what happens is they invest so much in education. You just about value. If a child who memorizes the Quran, for him, this is a great achievement. And yet, in that society, it's not. Because it can get him into year 7. It's the equivalent of a that child is frustrated. That child feels frustrated, unfair. And that child ends up in the hands of someone who says, this is an infidel society. It has no respect for God and for God. And that's how we get all these children to a military and security solution are essential. There's no way you can have a group of people with guns and bombs coming at you without a military and beyond Afghanistan, but if you look at Palestine, at the end of the day, we've got to win the peace. We've got to make sure that what we had with Boko Haram does not happen again. Children will not go to school. If you continue showing up the capital income numbers you have, the unemployment numbers you have, the youth numbers that you have, the very bad social policies, you're going to have something else. If you have a Boko Haram, frustrations. Let me give you you have a country of less than 10 million. Take a guess. What's the median age in Nigeria? Median age is 19. It's 19.
Puso, puso.
the Biafra War and Boko Haram and Fulani herdsmen are places.
Puso, a baby, puso, a baby.
So, don't anyone who thinks that because you've defeated Boko
Come
Haram,
on,
solved the problem, you know, all those young ones, you know, the toddlers that are around, all those young ones are going to grow up into a form of issues. So you've got to deal with, you've got to think, okay, where did we go wrong? And how do we make sure we don't go wrong with the next generation? This is, I think, for me, the point. The young lady, I wish I could claim that I was advocating for dismantling patriarchy. Unfortunately, I'm not that progressive.
Papa, mommy,
Not
papa,
that I think it's wrong.
papa,
If
mommy,
my daughter
papa, this, papa,
who says I'm a fool, that people think I'm
mommy,
progressive,
papa,
liberal, you know, and that they should ask her.
mommy,
She says 3 years after being in Kenya, I don't have a single graduate council. I have done nothing to show that I'm ready to have women become Kenyans, you know, and as far as she's concerned, I'm just slightly refined model of a woman. So the next generation is worse. No, I think that it's very difficult to and look, I don't expect to be moral issue with having a patrilineal or patriarchal or matrilineal system. I think at the end of the day, things have to work within a certain logic. So take the simple issue of child marriage. Okay, when we were growing up, it was very normal to have a girl of 12 or 13 get married to an older man. She was married. She
go to pee. I bet. These are cards. I bet. No. Masa,
That is part of the logic of the patriarchal system. Where things go wrong is when all the men take all the privileges of patriarchy without taking the responsibilities. In a patriarchal system, you will be ashamed to see that your son is a beggar. You want your son to be something. In a patriarchal system, you'll be ashamed to see that your wife has to go out to beg someone for food. That is not patriarchal. That is injustice.
come. Baby, come.
Maybe after we've resolved the
Baby,
issues of child marriage,
it did that. It can't do that. Daddy,
the developmental state.
Judo,
There are things that have worked and things that have worked.
Asian countries have gone through that process and they've moved into something about Nigeria and Indonesia growing apart. You can see clearly what they did that we didn't do. And you can see all the potential that Nigeria has with all the resources that we have. Just like I like to say, just imagine it. Just imagine if instead of burning all this gas, you produce electricity. Nigeria is 65% of the population in West Africa. It's 50% of West African GDP. It has a captive market without going outside its borders. It has 170 million institutions. How many bags? How many ships? How many kilowatts of electricity? How many gallons of water? Well, just think of it. It's I'm so the day Nigeria gets it. This is just one thing, that hasn't clicked. So I would say to Humphrey and just do what they did. Something never is one showed what could be done. With coffee. Got the IFC. By the time he was through, he became House of P60. Drink coffee, takes short. Doesn't just look at old Dangote, Dangote cement, electricity. What done to construction boom. Told the Chinese and the tariffs importing shoes come and not now outside the house. There's a great shop producing shoes and clothes exporting to the United States. If you double-digit 11-12%, speaking of central bank, I was agreeing with Andrew. I was telling my government, look at Ethiopia. Just a little bit of that. Lagos is 30% of Nigeria's non-all GDP. If Lagos grows by 10%, Nigeria's non-all GDP growing by 3%. What does it take to grow Lagos by 10%? The deep sea bridge, an expanded airport, some rail line to the traffic. So we'll get there. Don't worry. I have no doubt. The final point is about the French. The French president said what? Something about Africa having. Well, that's rich coming from the French. I mean, look. Who doesn't have a civilizational problem? Is it leadership? So where's the role modeling coming from? Is it America with Donald Trump or Russia with Putin? Where is the role modeling coming from? People need to stop pronouncing these judgments on other cultures and civilizations and economies. I can say a lot about the French. I'm going to Paris if I want to be rude. But no, I wouldn't listen to you. But I think that one of the greatest problems of the world, with some people, is that they're so quick to pronounce judgments. You've got to be able to identify the particular individual or the particular issue that you discuss. And we need to understand that in the 21st century world, every other world is a world that has many cultures and civilizations, all of which deserve to be respected. And we should, first of all, respect ourselves and then
Ladies and gentlemen, the time is 3 hours from Brighton to get here with some traffic jams. So we're going to have a part of the discussion relax a little bit with you for the section, and I'm sure it will be very helpful basis with you before we go off to solve the problems of Alpha and SOAS. I think we're all agreed that we'll listen to some words of wisdom tonight. I think that we should all thank the Emir from the depths of our being for his coming, talking so well, and imparting his wisdom to us. Ladies and gentlemen.
Next 2017 Ibrahim Forum Session Loading.
Good morning. Welcome to the first panel of the Mo Ibrahim 2017 Forum. We have a big topic today, the appeal of violent extremism and migration, and we have a very renowned panel. So what I'd like to do this morning is we have about an hour and a half. We'll start with 45 to 50 minutes of discussion among the panel. Then we'll begin first with our Mo Ibrahim fellows and scholars and allow them to ask a few